it was a luxury having him for one season as a Steelers linebackers coach and assistant coach. And we talked about it last week where it was like, look, you don't want to prevent him from getting an opportunity to move up in the league again. But this is bittersweet, Ike, because one season in Pittsburgh, to me, the key stat for Flores was solidifying the front seven. And going into this year, the Steelers this past season, the Steelers were ninth best in rushing defense compared to the previous year in 2021. They were an NFL worst. That to me shows the impact that he had. I can't help but wonder if the Steelers defense regresses just a little bit this upcoming season with Flores' departure.
Man, we knew Coach Flo was a former head coach for Miami. And we was talking all that smack about him getting rid of the picks. Little did we know, man, he was just building the whole organization from the draft. So he was letting guys go, getting rid of picks. And before you know it, Coach Mike McDaniel so far is reaping some of his benefits, to keep it honest with you. So I got to give a huge shout out to Coach Flo for not only coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Coach T giving him that lifeline, but at the same time, you got a former head coach sitting in the organization as a assistant defensive coordinator, linebacker coach. And you just mentioned Pittsburgh went from 32 to 9th when it came down to rushing. So Coach Flo had to have some kind of input. That's a former head coach right there. But I'm just glad he's getting back into the ranks, glad he's getting back onto the board. Now he's the Vikings DC. Coach Flo, when you talk to him, he don't really say too much. You just know he know football, so that's all Coach Flo. We call Coach Flo, he has an interrogation face. He don't really say too much. When you're getting interrogated and you talking back to the interrogator and he just looking at you and he just looking at you and he just looking at you like, I know you lying. I know you lying. I know you lying. I know you lying. That's like the personality of Coach Flo and his facial expression. But just being around Coach Flo, I've been around him for a year, my first time. So it was just good to listen to them talk football, listen to him evaluate players, and know that the Vikings are getting somebody special when it comes down to defense. Again, Mark, 32 ranked rushing defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Coach Flo come in as an assistant DC and a linebackers coach and then go to 9. So obviously the man know a little bit something about football, but the fact that what he did for the Miami Dolphins, Miami really wasn't known to have a good defense. I mean, he stacked Xavier Howard, and Xavier Howard, since Coach Flo had him, then 5, 6, 9, 9, 9, 9. He just been pick city when it comes down to that. So as much as we wanted to say how good of an offense the Miami Dolphins had before that offense came along, they sure did have a damn good defense. So you got to give a huge shout out to Coach Flo, because he was the one to acquire all them draft picks and start the Miami Dolphins from the drafts.
Yeah, Ike, and we can go, and we've talked a lot about his past with the Dolphins as the head coach there. But to me, I also look at this move, how other teams view this move within the NFC North division. And you know that I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I have a lot of friends and family that are Bears fans. They are mad at this move because they know that it's going to be a defensive upgrade for a Vikings defense that was 11-0 in one-score games. The Vikings, 11 of their 13 wins came in one-score games, but also the reason why the Vikings were looking for a defensive coordinator in the first place. The Vikings finished 29th in points allowed this past season and 31st in yards allowed. It's amazing they even made the playoffs, because it seemed like a cardiac, it almost seemed like a heart attack every time you watch the Vikings play this year. Remember, they had that game against the Colts where they rallied down 33 points. Long-term, big picture, I don't know you can have success if you don't have a more stout defense. And I think he's going to be able to bring that to the table in Minnesota. But my point being, when I've got Bears fans in my life reaching out and I've seen it on my timelines like, oh man, Minnesota just got better. They just upgraded. That to me lets me know everything I need to know what your opponent thinks about the move.
Yeah, Coach Flo, he going to come in like a baseball pitcher in the 9th inning. He's the closer. So you're not going to have a shootout as you did once before with the Minnesota Vikings. Coach is going to put a ceiling on these points, a few games. Maybe sometimes the ceiling might blow off the roof, but it's more games to none that he'll have, the Minnesota Vikings defense exactly where they want to be. For the past couple of years, the Minnesota Vikings, they've been getting in the playoffs I don't think they will have a defense like they will have with Coach Flo, especially when you have a running game like the Minnesota Vikings. And of course, you probably got the top three wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. So we'll see. But I think Coach Flo, he's just gonna put the icing on the cake, and that's putting the cap to points that the Minnesota Vikings have been allowing, especially late in the season.
Yeah, I also listen to the players as well. So I think about the impact that Flores had of what other players are saying. And most telling to me wasn't even a defensive player, but it was Kenny Pickett saying, hey, Flores helped me understand the 2-minute drill, what to do in those situations, and how to put your team in a position to win late in games. So the impact he had, even in one season within the Steelers organization, extends beyond just the linebackers, beyond just the defense, beyond just the front seven. It's clear he had an impact throughout the Steelers organization. Very happy to see him get a defensive coordinator opportunity. And reading the tea leaves, okay, Mike Tomlin's in his 50s. He's now coached 16 seasons for the Steelers. Whenever he decides he wants to hang it up, whether that's 5, 10, 15, however long he wants to coach the Steelers, I wouldn't mind if the Steelers gave Brian Flores a shot at being a head coach further down the line, because when he got fired from the Dolphins organization and he had back-to-back winning seasons for the first time in like 20 years, look, say what you want about the guy. There's no doubt in my mind he is deserving to be a head coach in this league, filed a lawsuit against the NFL. And like you said, Mike Tomlin gave him a lifeline, and credit both the Steelers and Flores for humbling himself from being a head coach in this league to saying, hey, now I'm going to work my way back up. And now he's a DC in Minnesota.
Mark, damn, you might be ahead of the curve. Golly, you might have hit it on this one. We'll talk about this in a couple of years from now. But what you just said, possibly in the next couple of years, we don't know how many years down the line. But if Coach Flo, whenever Coach T want to retire, want to put up for that head coaching job, if he don't already have one, or if he already have one, he just might be like, hell, F it. I know what this organization can do. I know the stability to this organization. This is exactly where I want to be at. You called it first. You called it. You called it.
I try to read the tea leaves, Ike, to where it's just like, okay, when moves happen, the question I ask myself is just like, if information's leaked, who's leaking the information, who stands to benefit, who doesn't, but then also like what happens next, what's the bigger picture. So I'm just trying to zoom out, Ike, and see from a big picture standpoint what that would be. And Mike Tomlin, again, in his 50s, he's still young. He could do another 10, 15, 20 years if he wants to. But at a certain point, you've done 16 years as the head honcho. At some point, it's like, I've gotten everything that I need to out of this. Flores is in his 40s, Ike, so about a decade younger, and there you go.
I don't know though, Mark. I'm saying Coach Andy Reid. Coach Andy Reid still going at it.
Belichick too.
Belichick, Pete Carroll, them boys in their 70s, and them boys still at a high level with a lot of energy. So Dick LeBeau, even though Dickie wasn't a head coach once, he was an interim head coach. But he was in his mid 70s. Mm-hmm. And I know them guys always say you always want to stay busy mentally. Physically, you're not able to do what you once was or what you could when you was younger. But if you can stay young mentally, it balances everything out. So what I do see about Coach T right now, like mentally, he's getting younger. He's evolving as a coach. He's evolving in some of his thinking. So we shall see. I just know, just learning from the old greats, they don't want to retire early. They don't mind consulting when they get to a certain age. But as far as like retiring, when that's just in them, when they don't look at it as a job, when it's something they always want to do, when it's just their routine, it'd be hard for them guys to retire early. And 50 is early.
Yeah, Ike, I'm with you. And you mentioned the great Dick LeBeau. Regardless of how old he was, and I loved how they would feature him on broadcast. I remember watching games, but even when he went to Tennessee, it was like, oof, if you're going against a Dick LeBeau defense, that's going to be awfully tough for the opposing team. I don't care what year it was. It was just like, the grass is green, the sky's blue, and Dick LeBeau's defense is going to be very, very tough to go against.
Yeah, Diggy different, man. I mean, that's a walking angel on earth. Diggy just a totally different. He's just totally different human. He ain't even a human. He's just an angel.